Do androids dream of electric sheep? Chapter 4. Maybe I'm worried, Rick Deckard conjectured, that what happened to Dave will happen to me. And Andy, smart enough to laser him, could probably take me too. But that didn't seem to be it. I brought you to see the poop sheet on that new brain unit, Inspector Bryant said, hanging up the vidphone. Rick said, yeah, I heard about it on the grapevine. How many Andys are involved and how far did Dave get? 8 to start with, Bryant said, consulting his clipboard. Dave got the first 2. And the remaining 6 are here in Northern California? As far as we know, Dave thinks so. That was him I was talking to. I have his notes, they're in his desk. He says that all he knows is here. Bryant tapped on the bundle of notepaper. So far, he did not seem inclined to pass the notes on to Rick. For some reason, he continued to leaf through them himself, frowning and working his tongue in and around the fringes of his mouth. I have nothing on my agenda, Rick offered. I'm ready to take over in Dave's place. Bryant said thoughtfully. Dave used the Void Camp altered scale in testing out the individuals he suspected. You realize, you ought to anyhow, that this test isn't specific for the new brain units. No test is. The Void scale, altered 3 years ago by Kampf, is all we have. He paused, pondering. Dave considered it accurate. Maybe it is, but I would suggest this before you take out after these 6. Again, he tapped a pile of notes. Fly to Seattle and talk with the Rosen people. Have them supply you a representative sampling of types employing the new 6 unit, and put them through the Void Camp, Rick said. It sounds so easy, Bryant said, half to himself. Pardon? Bryant said, I think I'll talk to the Rosen organization myself while you're on your way. He eyed Rick, then, silently. Finally he grunted, gnawed on a fingernail, and eventually decided on what he wanted to say. I'm going to discuss with them the possibility of including several humans, as well as their new androids. But you won't know. It'll be my decision, in conjunction with the manufacturers. It should be set up by the time you get there. He abruptly pointed at Rick, his face severe. This is the first time you'll be acting as senior bounty hunter. Dave knows a lot. He's got years of experience behind him. So have I, Rick said, tensely. You've handled assignments devolving to you from Dave's schedule. He's always decided exactly which one to turn over to you and which not to. But now you've got 6 that he intended to retire himself, one of which managed to get him first. This one. Bryant turned over the notes around so that Rick could see. Max Polakov, Bryant said. That's what it's called itself, anyhow. Assuming Dave is right. Everything is based on that assumption, this entire list. And yet the Void Camp altered scale has only been administered to the first 3. The 2 Dave retired, and then Polakov. It was while Dave was administering the test. That's what Polakov lasered him. Which proves that Dave was right, Rick said. Otherwise he would not have been lasered. Polakov would have no motive. You get started for Seattle, Bryant said. Don't tell them first. I'll handle it. Listen. He rose to his feet, somberly confronted Rick. When you run the Void Camp scale up there, if one of the humans fails to pass it... That can't happen, Rick said. One day, a few weeks ago, I talked with Dave about exactly that. He had been thinking along the same lines. I had a memo from the Soviet police, WPO itself, circulated throughout Earth, plus the colonies. A group of psychiatrists in Leningrad have approached WPO with following proposition. They want the latest and most accurate personality profile analytical tools used in determining the presence of an android, in other words the Void Camp scale, applied to a carefully selected group of psychoid and schizophrenic human patients, those specifically which reveal what's called a flattening of effect. You've heard that, Rick said. That's specifically what the scale measures. Then you understand what they're worried about. This problem has always existed, since we first encountered androids posing as human. The consensus of police opinion is known to you in Luris Kampf's article, written 8 years ago. Role-taking blockage in the undeteriorated schizophrenic. Kampf compared the diminished emphatic faculty found in human mental patients, and is superficially similar, but basically the Leningrad psychiatrist Brian broke in brusquely, think that a small class of human beings could not pass the scale. If you test them then in line with police work, you'd assess them as humanoid robots. You'd be wrong, but by then they would be dead. He was silent now, waiting for Rick's answer. But these individuals, Rick said, they would be in institutions, Brian agreed. They couldn't conceivably function in the outside world. They certainly couldn't go undetected as advanced psychotics, unless, of course, their breakdown had come recently and suddenly and no one had gotten around to noticing. But this could happen. 1,000,000 to 1 odds, Rick said, but he saw the point. What worried Dave, Bryant continued, is this appearance of the new Nexus 6 advanced type. The Rosen 6 organization assures us, as you know, that the Nexus 6 could be delineated by a standard profile test. We took their word for it. Now we're forced, as we knew we would be, to determine it on our own. That's what you'll be doing in Seattle. You understand, don't you, that this could go wrong either way. If you can't pick out all the humanoid robots, then we have no reliable analytical tool and will never find the ones who are already escaping. If your scale factors out a human subject, identifies him as android. Bryant beamed at him icily. It would be awkward, although no one, absolutely not one of the Rosen people, will make the news public. Actually, we'll be able to sit on it indefinitely, although of course we'll have to inform WPO, and they in turn will notify Leningrad. Eventually it'll pop out the papes at us, but by then we may have developed a better scale. He picked the phone up. You want to get started? Use a department car and fuel yourself with their pumps. Standing, Rick said. Can I take Dave Holden's notes with me? I want to read them along the way. Brian said, let's wait until you've tried your scale in Seattle. His note was interestingly merciless, and Rick Deckard noted it. When he landed the police department hover car on the roof of the Rosen Association building in Seattle, he found a young woman waiting for him. Black-haired and slender, wearing the new, huge, dust-filtering glasses, she approached his car, her hands deep in the pockets of her brightly striped long coat. She had, on her sharply defined small face, an expression of sullen distaste. What's the matter? Rick said as he stepped from the parked car. The girl said, obliquely, Oh, I don't know. Something about the way we got talked to on the phone. It doesn't matter. Abruptly, she held out her hand. He reflectively took it. I'm Rachel Rosen. I guess you're Mr. Deckard. This is not my idea, he said. Yes, Inspector Bryant told us that, but you're officially the San Francisco Police Department, and it doesn't believe our unit is to the public benefit. She eyed him from beneath long black lashes, probably artificial. Rick said, a humanoid robot is like any other machine. It can fluctuate between being a benefit and a hazard very rapidly. As a benefit, it is not our problem. But as a hazard, Rachel Rosen said, then you come in. Is it true, Mr. Deckard, that you are a bounty hunter? He shrugged, with reluctance, nodded. You have no difficulty viewing an android as inert, the girl said, so you can retire it, as they say. Do you have the group selected out for me, he said. I'd like to... He broke off, because all at once he had seen their animals. A powerful corporation, he realized, would of course be able to afford this. In the back of his mind, evidently, he had anticipated such a collection. It was not a surprise that he felt, but more a sort of yearning. He quietly walked away from the girl, towards the closet pen. Already he could smell them, the several scents of creatures standing or sitting, or in the case of what appeared to be a raccoon, asleep. Never in his life had he personally seen a raccoon. He knew the animal only from the 3D films shown on television. For some reason the dust had struck that species almost as hard as it had the birds, of which almost none survived now. In an automatic response, he brought out his much-thumbed Sydney and looked up the raccoon with all its sub-listings. The list prices, naturally, appeared in italics, like patron on horses. None existed on the market for sale at any figure. Sydney's catalog simply listed the price at which the last transaction involving a raccoon had taken place. It was astronomical. His name is Bill, the girl said from behind him. Bill the raccoon. We acquired him just last year, from a subsidiary corporation. She pointed past him, and he then perceived the armed company guards, standing with their machine guns, the rapid-fire, little light Skoda issue. The eyes of the guards had been fastened on him since his car landed, and, he thought, my car is clearly marked as a police vehicle. A major manufacturer of androids, he said thoughtfully, invests its surplus capital on living animals. Look at the owl, Rachel Rosen said. Here, I'll wake it up for you. She started towards a small, distant cage, in the center of which jutted up a branching dead tree. There are no owls, he started to say. Or, so we've been told. Sydney's, he thought. They list in their catalogue as extinct. The tiny, precise type, the E, again and again throughout the catalogue. As the girl walked ahead of him, he checked to see, and he was right. Sydney's never makes a mistake, he said to himself. We know that, too. What else can we depend on? It's artificial, he said, with some realization. His disappointment welled up keen and intense. No, she smiled, and he saw that she had small, even teeth, as wide as her eyes, and hair were black. But Sydney's listing, he said. Tried to show her the catalogue, to prove it to her. The girl said, we don't buy from Sydney's or any other animal dealer. All of our purchases are from private parties, and the prices we pay are not reported, she added. Also, we have our own naturalists. They are now working up in Canada. There is still a good deal of forest left, comparatively speaking anyhow. Enough for small animals, and once in a while a bird. For a long time he stood gazing at the owl, who dozed on its perch. 1,000 thoughts came into his mind, thoughts about the war, about the days when owls had fallen from the sky. He remembered how in his childhood it had been discovered that species upon species became extinct, and how the papers had reported it each day, foxes one morning, badgers the next, until people had stopped reading the perpetual animal obits. He thought, too, about his need for a real animal. Within him an actual hatred once more manifested itself towards his electric sheep, which he had to tend, had to care about, as if it lived. The tyranny of an object, he thought. It doesn't know I exist. Like the androids, it had no ability to appreciate the existence of another. He had never thought about this before, the similarity between an electric animal and an Andy. The electric animal, he pondered, could be considered a subform of the other, a kind of vastly inferior robot. Or, conversely, the android could be regarded as a highly developed, evolved version of the animal. Both viewpoints repelled him. If you sold your owl, he said to the girl, Rachel Rosen, how much would you want for it, and how much of that down? We would never sell our owl. She scrutinized him with a mixture of pleasure and pity, or so he read her expression. And even if we sold it, you couldn't possibly pay the price. What kind of animal do you have at home? A sheep, he said, a black-faced Suffolk. Well, then you should be happy. I'm happy, he answered. It's just that I've always wanted an owl, even back before they all dropped dead. He corrected himself. All but yours. Rachel said, our present crash program and overall planning call for us to obtain an additional owl which can mate with Scrappy. She indicated the owl dozing on its perch. It had briefly opened both eyes, yellow slits which healed over as the owl settled back to resume its slumber. Its chest rose conspicuously and fell, as if the owl, in its hypnagogic state, had sighed. Breaking away from the sight, it made absolute bitterness blend throughout his prior reaction of awe and yearning. He said, I'd like to test out the selection now. Can we go downstairs? My uncle took a call from your superior, and by now he probably has. You're a family? Rick broke in. A corporation this large is a family affair? Continuing her sentence, Rachel said, Uncle Eldon should have an android group and a control group set up by now. So, let's go. She strode towards the elevator, hands again thrust violently in the pockets of her coat. She did not look back, and he hesitated for a moment, feeling annoyance, before he at last trailed after her. What if you got against me? He asked her, as together they descended. She reflected, as if up to now she hadn't known. Well, she said, you, a little police department employee, are in a unique position. Know what I mean? She gave him a malice-filled, sidelong glance. How much of your current output, he asked, consists of types equipped with Nexus 6. All, Rachel said. I'm sure the Void Comp skill will work on them. And if it doesn't, we'll have to withdraw all Nexus 6 types from the market. Her black eyes flamed up. She glowered at him as the elevator ceased descending and his door slid back. Because you police departments can't do an adequate job in the simple matter of detecting the minuscule number of Nexus 6 who balk. A man, dapper and lean and elderly, approached them, hand extended. On his face a harried expression showed, as if everything recently had begun happening too fast. I'm Eldon Rosen, he explained to Rick as they shook hands. Listen, Deckard, you realize we don't manufacture anything here on Earth, right? We can't just phone down to production and ask for a diverse flock of items. It's not that we don't want or intend to cooperate with you. Anyhow, I've done the best I can. His left hand shakily roved through his thinning hair. Indicating his department briefcase, Rick said, I'm ready to start. The senior Rosen's nervousness buoyed up his own confidence. They're afraid of me, he realized with a start. Rachel Rosen included. I can already force them to abandon manufacture of their Nexus 6 type. What I do during the next hour will affect the structure of their operation. It could conceivably determine the future of the Rosen Association here in the United States, in Russia, and on Mars. The two members of the Rosen family studied him apprehensively, and he felt the hollowness of their manner. By coming here, he had brought the void to them, had ushered in emptiness and the hush of economic death. They control inordinate power, he thought. This enterprise is considered one of the system's industrial pivots. The manufacture of androids, in fact, has become so linked to the colonization effort that if one dropped into ruin, so would the other in time. The Rosen Association, naturally, understood this perfectly. Eldon Rosen had obviously been conscious of this since Harry Bryant's call. I wouldn't worry if I were you, Rick said as the two Rosens led him down a highly illuminated white corridor. He himself felt quite content. This moment, more than any other which he could remember, pleased him. Well, they would all soon know what his testing apparatus could accomplish, and could not. If you have no confidence in the Void Kampf scale, he pointed out, possibly your organization should have researched an alternate test. It can be argued that the responsibility rests partly on you. Oh, thanks. The Rosens had steered him from the corridor into a chic, living roomish cubicle, furnished with carpeting, lamps, couch, and a modern little end tables on which rented recent magazines, including, he noticed, the February supplement to the Sydney's catalogue, which he personally had not seen. In fact, the February supplement would not be out for another 3 days. Obviously, the Rosen Association had a special relationship with Sydney's. Annoyed, he picked up the supplement. This is a violation of public trust. Nobody should get an advance news of price changes. As a matter of fact, this might violate a federal statute. He tried to remember the relevant law, found he could not. I'm taking this with me, he said, and, opening his briefcase, dropped the supplement within. After an interval of silence, Eldon Rosen said wearily, Look, officer, it hasn't been our policy to solicit advance. I'm not a peace officer, Rick said. I'm a bounty hunter. From his open briefcase he fished out the Void Kampf apparatus, seated himself at a nearby rosewood coffee table, and began to assemble the rather simple polygraphic instruments. You may send the first testee in, he informed Eldon Rosen, who now looked more haggard than ever. I'd like to watch, Rachel said, also seating herself. I've never seen an empathy test being administered. What do those things you have there measure? Rick said, This, he held up the flat, adhesive disc with its trailing wires, measures capillary dilation in the facial area. We know this to be the primary autonomic response, the so-called shame or blushing reaction to a morally shocking stimulus. It can't be controlled voluntarily, as can skin conductivity, respiration, and cardiac rate. He showed her the other instrument, a pencil beam light. This records fluctuation of tension within the eye muscles. Simultaneous with the blush phenomenon, there generally can be found a small but detectable movement of. And these can't be found in androids, Rachel said. They are not engendered by the stimuli questions, no, although biologically they exist, potentially. Rachel said. Give me the test. Why? Rick said, puzzled. Speaking up, Eldon Rosen said hoarsely, We selected her as your first subject. She may be an android. We're hoping you can tell. He seated himself in a series of clumsy motions, got out a cigarette, lit it, and fixedly watched.